On a quiet Sunday morning in early December 1941, the Pacific seemed calm. The ships rested in the harbor. Sailors believed they were safe. Across the ocean, leaders in Japan believed they had made a bold and brilliant decision. They believed one strike would break the spirit of the United States. They believed that, if they hit hard enough, fast enough, America would choose negotiation over total war. They were wrong. When the bombs fell on Pearl Harbor, smoke covered the sky. Battleships burned. Men rushed through fire and water. The attack shocked the nation. For a moment, it looked like Japan had delivered a devastating blow. Newspapers printed words like disaster and humiliation. Commentators asked whether the United States could recover. But what Japan did not understand was this. They had not attacked a small island nation. They had not attacked a fragile empire. They had attacked an industrial giant that had barely begun to awaken. In the days that followed, something changed inside America. Anger spread quickly, but so did determination. Factories that once produced refrigerators and automobiles began preparing to build tanks and aircraft. Assembly lines were redesigned. Steel mills increased production. Shipyards expanded at a pace the world had never seen before. Leaders in Japan had calculated ships and planes. They had counted carriers and battleships. They had studied military positions, but they failed to measure something far more powerful. They failed to measure production capacity. Before the war, the United States already possessed one of the largest industrial economies in the world. Railroads connected cities from coast to coast. Rivers powered turbines. Skilled workers filled workshops and machine shops. When the country decided to mobilize, it did so with overwhelming speed. Factories ran day and night. Lights glowed in industrial cities long after sunset. Workers took shifts that blurred together. Men who once built farm equipment now assembled artillery. Car companies retooled their plants to manufacture engines for bombers. The sound of rivets and hammers became the rhythm of a nation preparing for total war. Women stepped into roles that had previously been closed to them. They welded steel. They operated heavy machinery. They inspected ammunition. The image of strong factory workers became a symbol of unity and purpose. Production was no longer just an economic activity. It was patriotism in motion. Japan had hoped that by crippling the Pacific Fleet, it could secure dominance in the Pacific long enough to force a settlement. In the early months after Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces moved quickly across Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands. They captured territory and gained momentum. For a brief period, it appeared that their gamble might succeed. But while battles were being fought across distant waters, something far more decisive was happening thousands of miles away inside American shipyards. New aircraft carriers were laid down. Destroyers rolled out of dry docks. Submarines were launched at astonishing speed. Liberty ships, simple cargo vessels designed for rapid construction, were produced in such numbers that shipyards struggled to keep track of them. What once took many months to build now took weeks. Some ships were assembled in days. Japanese planners had not imagined this scale. They believed they were fighting a navy. In reality, they were fighting an industrial system capable of replacing losses faster than they could inflict them. As the war moved into the middle years, the balance began to shift. American aircraft production surged. Bombers rolled off assembly lines in staggering quantities. Training programs expanded. Pilots were prepared faster. Mechanics were trained in large numbers. Supply chains grew more efficient. The Battle of Midway became a turning point, not only because of tactics or intelligence, but because of what it represented. It marked the moment when Japanese expansion slowed and American momentum began to build. As the months passed, the nation's resolve hardened. Every victory, every ship launched, every plane taking to the skies reminded the world that America would not be intimidated. Young men enlisted in unprecedented numbers. Motivated by a sense of duty, honor, and the belief that their sacrifices were part of something greater. Training camps buzzed with activity, and soldiers were molded into units that could move with precision and determination. But while American soldiers trained and American factories roared to life, the war itself was raging across the Pacific. The attack on Pearl Harbor had not been just a single moment in history. It was the beginning of a series of battles that would test the courage. But on the morning of December 7th, 1941, the calm of Pearl Harbor was shattered. Before the sun had fully risen, Japanese aircraft began their approach, flying low over the waters of Oahu. The first warning came from a lookout who spotted planes on the horizon. By 7:55 in the morning, the first wave struck. Dive bombers, torpedo planes, and fighters moved in tight formations. Their targets were the battleships moored in the harbor. The Arizona, Oklahoma, West Virginia, and California became the focus of relentless attacks. Torpedoes ripped through hulls, bombs tore open decks, and smoke began to rise in dark plumes over the water. On shore, the explosions echoed through the islands. The sailors ran to their stations, some into the water to escape fires, others to fight back with whatever weapons they could find. Anti-aircraft guns opened fire, but many crews were caught off guard, unprepared for the scale and speed of the assault. Admiral Husband Kimmel, commander of the Pacific Fleet, struggled to coordinate a defense. Reports of incoming aircraft were initially confusing, and it took precious minutes for orders to be issued. Meanwhile, Vice Admiral Nagumo, commanding the Japanese strike force, pressed the attack with ruthless efficiency. Torpedo planes skimmed the water, dropping their deadly payloads against the moored battleships. Dive bombers swooped down from the sky, aiming for the decks and superstructures, while fighter planes strafed anything that moved. Explosions ripped through the harbor. Smoke and flames rose in thick clouds covering the water and sky alike. The Arizona erupted in a massive fireball that could be seen for miles, while the Oklahoma rolled onto its side, trapping hundreds of men inside. On the decks and in the water, American sailors acted with courage that would be remembered forever. Men manned anti-aircraft guns with hands scorched by fire, returning fire even as bombs fell around them. Fire crews rushed into burning compartments to save their shipmates. Pilots scrambled into the sky, determined to engage despite overwhelming odds. Every action, every act of bravery, became part of the story of a nation refusing to be defeated. The first wave of the attack lasted less than 30 minutes, but it had already inflicted devastating damage. Ships were burning, planes destroyed on the ground, and over 2,000 men had lost their lives. Yet the American response had already begun to form. Officers like Admiral Kimmel and Lieutenant General Short worked frantically to coordinate defense. The nation was waking up. Then the second wave arrived, striking around 8:45. This time, Japanese planes targeted airfields, repair facilities, and fuel depots. Hickam Field, Wheeler Field, and other installations were set ablaze. The roar of explosions and gunfire echoed across the islands. Fires spread uncontrollably, and the destruction seemed total. And yet, amidst the smoke and chaos, Americans fought back. Pilots took to the skies in small numbers, shooting down attackers whenever possible. Soldiers and civilians alike rescued the wounded, cleared debris, and prevented further disaster. The attack ended by 9:45 in the morning. Over 18 ships were damaged or sunk, hundreds of aircraft destroyed, and thousands of lives lost. Japan believed it had struck a decisive blow. They had calculated ships, planes, and men. They had not calculated the spirit of a free nation, nor the strength that would soon follow. Within hours, across the United States, the wheels of mobilization began turning. Factories that had built cars and household goods now churned out warships, bombers, and tanks. Shipyards launched vessels faster than ever before. Aircraft factories produced bombers and fighters at unprecedented speed. Women stepped into roles that had previously been closed to them. They welded steel, operated heavy machinery, and inspected munitions. Every citizen understood that they were part of a single, unstoppable force. Japan had hoped to cripple the Pacific Fleet and force a settlement. Instead, they had awakened the full power of America. By the time the first counteroffensive was planned, the United States was no longer reacting. It was preparing to strike back, with a resolve that would carry across the Pacific and change the course of the war. The attacks on Pearl Harbor had not defeated America. They had marked the moment when a sleeping giant rose to its full might.